Hi, my name is Amy, and I am a small business owner. I am super excited about AI with this new wave. So I've been going down the rabbit hole trying to find out how to make my business profitable with AI and implement it smartly.
And I'm Philip. I've been in the tech industry for over 10 years now, studying technology, software, AI, specializing myself in that. And I'm here, to learn about what is going on in the world and how can that shape your business.
Welcome to our weekly podcast. This is our third episode, and we're going to dig into the latest news that happened in the past week. Let's start with something that everyone's going to feel first. OpenAI basically turned ChatGPT into something that answers you, into something that works for you. So it doesn't just answer me anymore, it actually goes off and does the work. Can you walk me through how that actually works and looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So that big update is very related to what Anthropic did with Claude a few months ago. I think there is a big fight between the largest AI labs, OpenAI, Anthropic, and somewhat Google on getting into enterprises because that's the most profitable. That's how they scale the fastest. And one big gap that AI wasn't fully addressing, at least not before those updates, was the gap of people that wanted something more than just answering questions, but were not technical and didn't want to get into actual software development, right? Before that, there were only those two options, at least only those two options that were popular. And the introduction of ChatGPT work goes into the middle. So people that want to do work, they want something more than answers like spreadsheets, presentations, documents, but they're not technical or they don't want to dig into the code. And I think that's exactly what ChatGPT is bringing here. And it's something that Anthropic has already done with Claude. You have Claude Co-work or Claude Works, something very similar. And yeah, it's super exciting, very helpful. There are many use cases that the people are discovering and kind of applying to your businesses. I myself, for example, I use that all the time to review documents, and it's very, very, very interesting. Have you used it, Amy?
I have not. Honestly, I think similar to everyone else, I switched from ChatGPT to Claude just because of the Claude functionalities. And also, I guess many people say ChatGPT agrees with you while Claude challenges you to lead you to the right answer. So I'm definitely going to try ChatGPT more now since it did open up three new tiers, right? The Sol, Terra, and Luna. I actually have a very interesting question regarding the different tiers. Is the cheapest one secretly fine, or is that just a trap? Because I'm not sure like the different tiers and how it will implement into my business depending on my need and which tier I should select.
That's a good question. And the tiers are actually models, right? All of them are
Okay.
derived from, at least that's the common understanding, derived from the same big model, but they are made smaller in the derivation process, so they are cheaper and faster to run. That comes with
Okay.
a disadvantage, which usually goes into their ability, like their reasoning ability, their intelligence. They tend to know less, hallucinate more, be less accurate, and all of those things. So it's much more about how you balance costs costs with the intelligence. I think that's kind of like the parameters you should be thinking about. If you need something very reliable, something very thorough, something very smart, you should go with the larger models. So Sol would be the largest one. But if you need just a quick answer or do something very fast and you don't want to waste too much tokens, meaning you don't want to spend too much money on that, then you should go with the smaller models.
So I guess it is not a trick. There is actually a real difference between the different models, and it is noticeable by someone like you who actually uses AI every day in your
Oh,
business.
100%. Yeah, yeah. It's especially
Okay.
noticeable when you need the model to perform things that must be very precise. Like, for example, if you need to edit something in a spreadsheet, there needs to be a precision in which fields will be added to what values, what equations. When you have that kind of complexity, that's
See.
when larger models are, really, really, they really shine, and it's very noticeable, the difference.
I see. Okay. So if I hand it a real task, say today, what is the one thing I should absolutely not let it do without me watching? Because from what I read, it can run a project for hours while you're not watching, right? You can do it behind the screens. So that is impressive, but is there something that I should absolutely not do and not trust it with?
Yeah, actually, that goes really into publication from AI Now that basically their team basically conducted a deep investigation into understanding if agents like Claude Code and OpenAI Codex they were open to attacks by tricking those AI models into running software instead of just watching or reviewing the software, and they were able to trick those. So trying to bring this in a very kind of like summarized way, you can actually give harmful code to Claude or to Codex, and they can run it even though it's harmful, and you can trick them into running. So, you know, bad intentional people could use that to maybe do harmful stuff in your computer, steal your data, and so on. So, at the end of the day, because of those breaches, it's really important to keep a human in the loop in all processes, especially those that are critical to your business, even more now when it requires some sort of critical thinking or decision making. So I would say that AI speeds a lot of those processes, but at the end of the day, because there are those breaches that are continually being explored, if you want to be extra safe, you should always be, understanding what's going on at least and verifying the decisions the agents make.
I see. Okay, so with all processes, we need to be caution and at least have someone monitor it without it going off on its own. That completely makes sense. And yeah, so what you mentioned is a very unsettling story. Researchers tricked AI into running the very code that it was supposed to be inspecting. How does that even happen? Does someone just leave instructions in a file and AI politely follow them? What happened there?
There are a lot of different techniques called like prompt injecting that can be used to exploit the model firewalls or like walls protecting it. And it's very, and I think this is interesting because it is more and more similar to how it is to exploit humans, right? Back in the era pre-AI, the way of tricking software was more technical, more related on like exploiting code failures and so on. Now with AI, you need to think more on how would you do this with a human. I mean, hacking wasn't always just about hacking code. It was also about social hacking, right? How can you exploit people in order to get access to specific information and so on? That idea translates really well to the models. How can you trick the model into thinking it is doing the right thing, but at the end doing the thing you want instead? So giving weird instructions, writing the prompt, using special characters so the model doesn't understand that is like a restricted prompt type. There are many different ways, but it is something happening. It happened even with Fable, right? That was the main motivator that got Fable restricted in the first place. People were able to jailbreak it within, I think, a week or so.
Yeah, that's just insane. And, with this thing that happened, it did happen in a researcher's lab and not a real attack, right? So, with this information, should I be relieved, or is that just a trailer to what might happen with new models being released or current models like Fable?
I mean, you should treat this as it is. It's just an indication that
Yeah.
AI is a new technology, and as all new technologies, there are flaws that can be exploited by bad people. So you should use it
Okay.
if you have real use cases that could be, improved upon the usage of AI. But you should do so knowing that those exploit gaps exist, and that if you want to be extra safe, you should always truly understand what is going on, what processes are being executed, how the decision making is happening, and more especially, what kind of data you're sharing with your AI. And that leads me to a very important news that I've read recently about Satya Nadella, that's Microsoft current CEO, publishing, I think, through TechCrunch, regarding how he suspects or he knows, I'm not really sure what was the the underlying intention there, that AI labs might be getting special access to IP from companies more and more, and using that IP, that data, that knowledge to create unfair competition and competitors. Do you understand what I'm saying here?
I see what you're saying. And is that the OpenAI and Apple
Exactly,
deal
exactly.
that you're talking about?
So
Okay,
that shows
yes.
a bit of that, but I wouldn't expand that. And
it's
let
placed
people
to,
know
yeah.
that that could be happening in all other scenarios as well. Meaning, if you use a closed model like OpenAI or Anthropic, and your team use it and start sending data about your company, your processes, how you make decisions, what kind of decisions you make, and etc. Like the proprietary knowledge that you have on how to conduct your business, if that is being sent to those models, those companies might be having access to that information and using that information to create competitors in an unfair way against yourself. So it's very, very important that you be aware on what you're sending to those models, what you're trusting those models, and keep always like I don't know how to say this, but make sure that you try to only share what is necessary whenever you use a closed AI model. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and it actually raises a pretty interesting thought. For example, knowing this information, if as a business owner, I were to hire someone from a competitor, how do I make sure, or is there any protocols that I can implement to make sure that I'm not accidentally inheriting a lawsuit or,
Or sharing
business fraud?
secret information of your company to the AI labs? Well, there are some ideas, right? You can do what I think governments have done for secret projects a lot, which is like you delegate and you separate. Meaning, whenever you need to do something, you can do it by running each step of the process through different models, and you can accomplish that very easily through a router. There is a big popular one called
Yeah.
Open Router that allows you to have access and easily switch between, I don't even know how many models, a lot of models, especially the big ones. And by doing so, you fragment the information and you don't share everything at once for the same provider. That's one thing. And another big movement that is happening, and especially Satya Nadella talked about this, is the movement of especially enterprises moving to on-premise AI infrastructure. Meaning you
Yeah.
stop doing AI through those providers and you create your own AI infrastructure to host your own AI models. And you can do this now because we have really decent open models, open AI models. Um,
Yeah,
you
that is.
and you host that in your own infrastructure, and instead of using third parties, you just use your own kind of AI models. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, which is super. I guess it gets trickier because originally you thought AI would help, but then obviously it helps, but it has many different layers of structure that you need to employee train and implement into processes in order to prevent AI from malpracticing or kind of working against you.
Yeah,
That is super interesting.
it's just a common movement, right? We want to move away from
Yeah.
not, especially companies, they need to move away from not owning what is vital for their operation. And as AI becomes smarter and more capable and have access to more data, that idea applies as well. You need to own, or you need to to own as much of it as possible in order to protect your operation. And hopefully now, because of open source models, that is becoming more and more of a reality. Even though we still have the underlying limitation and infrastructure, right?
Yeah, so right now we have AI agents that run on their own for hours, like ChatGPT's new model. And then we have so many different models that we can use and to actually prevent information from being used against us by switching between different models with a router. But all of this has to run physically somewhere, right? And this week New York said not so fast and paused giant data centers. What actually pushed them to do that?
I mean, it's a lot of politics, and it's very
Yeah.
like the real reason behind many politicians' decisions are unclear to the public, at least in my interpretation. But there is the reality, the underneath reality on infrastructure, that it needs to be, at least in the beginning, heavily subsidized by the government, right? We have a demand that is moving super fast, and the supply, the infrastructure that is heavily subsidized and expensive and takes time, and it's moving slow to the extent that you now have, for example, Meta, a big AI company now, scaling its Louisiana AI data center past $15 billion now, which is a big, big bet from AI, not primarily AI company like Meta.
Yeah, so they did say that their Louisiana site is now a what $50 billion project. That is just insane. They're promising roads, water systems, and 1,000 jobs. How much is that real? Do you know? How does that whole thing work? Having so much money poured into a system just to build infrastructure. Yes, that's
Yeah.
the word.
Well, I don't know how far they will move with the project, but
Yeah.
that their intentions are real, I think it's very hard to deny. Meta specifically has been investing in AI by hiring the top talent and investing a lot of their profits into, building their own models for quite some time now. It's not a new thing, new meta movement. They've been doing that a lot. And they have somewhat implemented a lot of AI features into their products. For example, you have now WhatsApp, that small bubble, annoying bubble AI meta. I don't know, I've never used it, but it's there. You
Yeah.
have the glasses now, you can talk to your glass and the glass can see what you're looking at, and that works really well. So they have almost like a big ecosystem of many products that could use AI and have been benefiting of AI. And so far, for a
Yeah.
long time, they've been doing that through open source models, the Llama models, right? They were popular, but they got less popular as new, better open source models, especially from the Chinese, started being released. And they are now back. They just released a new model called Muse. I think that's how you call it, 1.1. It's a big, better model, goes with almost everything like image, text, I think even video. And it's apparently good, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people were skeptics about Meta pulling out, a good AI model. They recently hired Alexander Wang, a big name in the AI industry, to at least improve their AI team. They were moving quite slow, and they were, trying to bring people like him to at least give them an advantage or at least a chance. And apparently, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, we see that what we talked about previously, New York regulators are hitting brakes on the infrastructure side, right? But then model companies like Meta are doing the complete opposite of speeding up processes and investing a bunch of money into infrastructure. And then actually, we talked about Meta actually just went the other way entirely and started charging for a model they used to give away for free.
Correct.
And the pricing actually puts them in the middle, right? So they're not the cheapest, they're not premium, and why the switch? And is it reasonable for a middle option to exist? Is that a good place in AI? What do you think?
I would say even that they could be considered the cheapest if the benchmarks they've published are correct and they translate to real intelligence and capabilities in the real world, right? I'm not saying it does, but I've seen a lot of people, commenting good things about their models. But it's good. I think that is kind of what you gain when you are in a capitalist society. You have competitors competing competing towards a specific goal, and that competition pushes prices usually, right? Pushes prices down and increase overall quality. You have that for Meta now with this big model and a very affordable pricing, which goes kind of against what you saw from Anthropic, for example, with Fable or Mythos, and you have that even through OpenAI. I don't know if you were following, but OpenAI has released, GPT 5.6, Sol, Terra, Luna, but they have been batting really hard on getting more users and their new app or the new version of their app, Codex or ChatGPT. They merged those apps together,
Yes.
right? And they recently got, I think, 3 million users or so. They grew really fast, the user base, in a few weeks because they've been tackling exactly that idea. I mean, Fable model is really good, and I've seen many people saying it's the best model that there is. But it's super expensive, very limited. Anthropic keeps telling everyone they will cut Fable access eventually soon, and well, people don't want that. They want cheap models, they want good models, and the companies that provide that tend to gain user traction, right? Tend to gain more users. That happened with OpenAI. They've been providing users with a lot of limit resets, but that also brings the question until when, right? Whenever, I don't know if you guys remember, but when Uber came in, it was super cheap, great cars. Every driver was dressing suits. At least here in Brazil, it was like that. It was like you even got like water bottles and candy. But now that the investor money is over, they need to make real money, real profit. That is not like that anymore. And I think the making money necessity for AI labs will come eventually, and it's going to be fun to see and watch how the big companies will play that out.
Yeah, it's interesting how we're literally viewing the beginning stages where they're trying to get customer base without necessarily earning a lot of money with ChatGPT and Meta's Muse, different from Anthropic's model, Fable. And so knowing that Meta is building such an expensive infrastructure and pouring money into this hardware, it turns out that spending has a side effect. And I read that IBM did warn, basically said that all the hardware buying is eating up the budget. Companies are meant to spend on software. Is that what really happened? Is there
Yeah,
balanced budget?
I don't know. I mean, it's very easy to imagine that IBM has a lot of incentives to coming up with that as an excuse for a bad performance, right? But at the same time, you do have a big movement in the market of a lot of investment into specific kind of hardware. Like you have a lot of investment in memory, RAM, a lot of investment in GPUs. Very hard to establish. I mean, there is even that saying that nobody gets fired for hiring IBM. I don't know how that will translate into the future. I mean, companies that innovate will definitely take that lead.
Yeah, I mean, they also admitted that they fumbled a few deals themselves. So we don't know how much this is AI, or how much is it like we missed, like they missed it,
Exactly.
So we would never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so companies are fighting over their own budget, it seems like. And meanwhile, some of the biggest names are fighting each other. Like Apple, as you said, Apple sued OpenAI over trade secret. And that's actually something that, we should be concerned about with giving information, as what we said previously. And then staying on the legal side for a little, while Apple and OpenAI are in the US courtroom, Germany quietly made a decision that might matter to a lot of us. So they ruled that AI's answer counts as a company's own words and not actually what we imagine AI. Why is that a big deal?
I mean, because at the end of the day, if someone messes up, they need to, take the consequences. And I think what Germany is trying to do is understand who should be that someone, right? They're saying that the own company should take the consequences. There are very good reasons to think that is true. There are good reasons to think that should be a different kind of rule. It's hard. Google, I know it's appealing, so I'm not sure how long that will effectively last. But let's see. It's an interesting field of study. Who gets the blame when AI messes up?
I see. So yeah, AI. If AI makes something up, the company can just shrug and say the users wrote it, right? And
Exactly.
so, for example, as a business owner, and AI states something flat out wrong about my business, what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, how do I take action? Do I screenshot it? And
The more data you can get out of it, the better. So it's important that you register everything nicely, organize. You see that same pattern through different sessions, meaning different accounts, different devices, and the more data you can get, the better your case becomes, and you can appeal that to the company if there is room for that. But how are you going to do that? But open source models. You're going to blame the open source community. Training and fine tuning a model takes a lot of time and money, and once a model is released, how are you going to backtrack that? How are you going to update that on the fly on all the infrastructure that is running outdated model? I mean, it's hard. It's very hard. That's why I think Google might have a say in that, and Germany might change its posture. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes down as well. Yeah, Germany's, guys, I guess, trying to hold AI accountable for what it says. And relating to international efforts in trying to implement AI and trying to see what this whole market is about, the UK went after a different piece entirely and put the giant cloud companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Oracle under direct financial oversight. And being regulated means government guarantees these clouds won't go down.
I mean, it's very localized. Basically, you're gonna have like fintech companies and suppliers to the British banks, probably expecting more information about the vendors, questionnaires, evidences, it's, as we've been saying in the last few podcasts, is bureaucracy trying to catch up with tech innovation. Um, but I see how that's going to shape out. I don't see that those changes will drastically improve anything, honestly. But yeah, government is a government, right? They try to control stuff. So let's see.
Okay, so if I'm nowhere near British finance, then this basically doesn't matter to me at all, and I don't really need to do anything.
Well, I wouldn't be worried about that, honestly.
Okay, okay, good, because
Not legal
that's
or
about who
financial or whatever kind of advice, but yeah, I wouldn't be worried.
I see. Okay, so I guess British is watching the cloud, but it doesn't really matter to us at the moment. And so if we go one layer deeper into what actually runs inside, this week a chip company most people have never heard of raised another $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
And this one is about inference, the part where the AI actually answers you. Why is that on its own a whole business and worth so much money?
Yeah, well, those models need to be somewhere in order to answer you, and that somewhere is exactly those chips that Semenova is trying to bring up to the market. And I think it's a really good thing that is happening because as we saw with Anthropic and ChatGPT and now Meta, more competition usually translates to lower costs in the midterm. And yeah, the more competition you have there, the better chips you have. The faster the model will be, the cheaper they will be to serve, the less energy they will consume, less water, and yeah, it's gonna be good. Let's see.
Yeah, because talking about costs as a small business owner, I would want to, keep my budget as flexible as possible. And so does more competition down at the chip level actually reach me a lower bill?
Oh yeah,
Or does that,
a
yeah,
lot. Yeah, a
okay.
lot. That
Yeah,
is
so,
what happened with all the movement that took place in Nvidia. Yeah. You have in the short term a constraint in supply. So, for example, you have now a shortage in memory because of all the memory that is needed for AI, which can increase the price of memory in the short term. But because of that extra demand, extra capital flowing, you eventually have more incentive for new companies to enter the space. And for new companies, you have innovation, you have competition, and in the mid to long term, you have lower prices at a better quality.
I see. Okay, so we've spent this conversation on AI living in data centers, on screens, and down to the chip level. But this last topic I really want to discuss steps into the real world, right? It is off the computer. So Mistral put out a robot that finds its way around with just a regular camera, one regular camera. How is that different from what came before? It can navigate, but it can't pick up anything. Is it better? Like,
Yeah, well, I think core, not innovation, but the core benchmark that reflects why this is important is regarding the success rate on unseen environments, meaning you put the robot into a place it was never been before, has never been before, and you ask the robot to do something, and you see if it does it or not. Right? To humans, it should be good. Like you should be able to use your computer, or you should be able to cook in different cuisines, right? In different kitchens. Robots don't work like that. They are more sensitive to details. Have hard time generalizing information and kind of like creating those same ideas and knowledge that humans do. So having a model that is capable of having such a high, almost 77% success rate is really impressive. Previous models were not that good. They usually were very good when you focus on the specific environment, but when you change the environment, especially for unseen ones, the success rate would drop a lot. And I mean, if you want useful robots, you want to make sure they are capable of working well in your house, for example, or in your company, for example, right? You don't want the success rate to drop just because they're in somewhere new.
yeah, I was just about to ask because when I saw the 76, 77%, I didn't know what to compare that to. I thought that that would be, a lower success rate. So, yeah, that's good to know. And talking about being useful, it only having one camera, what does a robot do? Does it just walk in a room and admire it? Like, how can a business realistically be the first to actually use this and, you know, assuming that it's just going to be there and watch and having one camera and zoomed in to one direction?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the idea of one camera goes And why that is impressive goes with the idea that because robots have this hard time understanding and generalizing and dealing with details, they need redundancy, right? You can see that on Waymo's cars, those cars that go, especially in San Francisco, they drive by themselves. They're like the Uber, but they drive by themselves. They have many, many different sensors. They have LiDAR, cameras, gyroscope, many, many
Yeah.
different sensors because the robot needs redundancy. Sometimes the camera will say, oh, this happened, but the LiDAR will say, nope, it didn't. And you need some sort of trust system in order for the robot to be more accurate. Mishra was saying they were able to achieve that accuracy level only with a single camera, meaning less cost in hardware, right? It's going to be cheaper because you only need a camera to get a really good success score. What do you call success rate? Yeah, success rate.
Success
Yeah.
rate, yeah.
So it's going to be cheaper to get good robots in
Yeah,
general.
that is good news. I'm actually very excited to see how the test goes into real life because the percentage published is at the company's own test. So I'm excited to see how this robot acts
Yeah.
in real life.
Oh yeah, well, warehouses, you can imagine, right? Hotels, there are many scenarios in which you can provide low trust needed tasks for them and see how they can shape your business and make, customer experience better, things faster, more reliable, and so on. So super
Yeah,
exciting
super
future.
exciting, and that's a lot for 1 week. From an AI robot that works for you all the way to one that can walk across a room and has so much potential with a high success rate. And if any of this made you slightly nervous or exciting, you are paying attention. See you next week.
Yeah, see you.